We hear Kenyans saying that when Kenya got independence in 1963, we were on the same level with Singapore and other emerging Asian tigers. It is even said that Singapore sent some experts to come and case study Kenya. Others even say that Botswana, the engineers who built Botswana, are from Kenya. Actually, Botswana constructed a prison fresh from the ground. You see, Kenya, we have a problem because we have two towns like Kitale and Wajir. Both have prisons in the CBD. Now moving the prisons out of the CBD after it had been there for decades is a problem, but at least for Kitale they are moving out. But in Botswana they started a prison from the ground. And who built it? It was Dr. Timothy Motiso, a person known to me. We cannot compare Kenya to Botswana because Botswana has a lot of gems. It has built itself through selling of diamonds and other things. When it comes to Singapore and other emerging places like Hong Kong and so on, first of all, we have to understand that those emerging Asian tigers are what is called the city-state. City-state. Now, how can I explain a city-state to a Kenyan? A city-state is like, let's take Lamu County. Make Lamu County a country of its own. Then, have a lot of investment. And you know, Singapore is somewhere near where we have communists around. The major one being China. So you'll find that American propaganda tried to develop such city-states so as to, with an eye to North Korea, China and other neighboring. So there was a lot of heavy financial investments from the Western. And also if you look at those small towns, you'll find that small Singapore and so on, these are what we call city-state. City-state, we can also equate it with Kuwait. We can even equate it to Doha is in Qatar. Can even equate it to Qatar and so on. For a Kenyan to understand, I can give an example of Lamu County. Assume that Lamu County becomes a state, a sovereign state, so that people build there a lot of port. Then you have people like Somalia. They clear their things through Lamu. Ethiopia clears, Southern Sudan, Uganda, and Burundi, Rwanda. So you find that if these countries, all of them clear their things through that county called Lamu, and you find that when that county called Lamu, there is a population can even be 1 million. Most of the people there would be workers. So you find that such a city-state can come up and be very rich. The other reason that is making Kenya different from the second one, because there are three, the second reason that is making Kenya be different from such emerging Asian tigers like Singapore and so on, it has to do with our leaders, the Kenyan leaders whom we have had since independence. they have been grabbers. There was even a rumor that foreign aid could come, land at the airport, and when the plane is going back, it would go back with over 80% of what has been brought. So there was a lot of stealing by our leaders. And the other reason why Kenya is behind, the third and final one, is to do with what is in the mind of the Kenyan. Find any ordinary Kenyan on the road. The Kenyan believes that the government has money somewhere. And it is up for the government to come and develop even to every village and tarmac the place. Apart from, you see, I used to work in Northeastern, and when you look at the Lapset, it is a rail that was specifically made, and also when Kenya went to Somalia, it is because there is a lot of oil in that area that the Lapset rail is following. But Kenya, generally, we have no minerals. We have no. So the government of Kenya relies on two things only. It relies on people being taxed. It relies on three things. It relies on people being taxed. It relies on borrowing. And previously, during the Cold War, Kenya relied on aid. You see, during the Cold War and the Iron Curtain, it was known that African countries used to blackmail developed countries. You go to Western countries and say, if you don't develop Kenya, it used to be balance of payment. Yeah, Kenya would, like today we had a budget where it is 3 trillion. So Kenya would go and say that we can only raise 2 trillion. We can raise 1 trillion, we can borrow 1 trillion, and we have a shortcoming of 1 trillion. If the USA refuses to give that free money to Kenya, then Kenya would risk going to Soviet Union. So we have been so used to that, and you find in other countries, I've said that in other countries you find the leaders were not corrupt, leaders were not stealing. But on top of that, in other countries, children are born knowing that if you don't pay tax, that is, you are even shot by a firing squad. But in Kenya, the Kenyan would be the last. You'll find an ordinary Kenyan, just an ordinary Kenyan. He wants the government to invest in him or her, but he would be the last person to voluntarily pay taxes. If we can pay taxes, we will clear the debt. If we pay taxes and minimize borrowing, because Kenya Kwanza government can decide to put on those things that they want, and then push away the payment we are supposed to pay today. We push it tomorrow, so that those who are being born pay. It can even decide to borrow more and then subsidize everything. Or it can decide to stop or minimize borrowing, then be very strict on tax payment. Of course, take care of the Kenyan thinking that somebody will steal the money, but we have to look at it. The only thing I'm differing with the president, which also Jimmy Wanjigi tried to say, is that apparently Ruto wants us to clear all these problems within a period of his term. But I believe that to clear this thing, the minimum we can take is 20 years. And that would mean all those who would be in State House for those 20 years do carry on. Because a new president coming in 2027 or even 2032, it will mean that we have to hope that he has to also to have that feeling. But otherwise, that is my small comment on why we are, at least for an ordinary person, you now understand.